to go to the one person that has been using Symfony before Symfony was a thing. A man that does not need an introduction, but I could give him a really embarrassing one. The man, the myth, the legend, Fabien.
Thank you. Okay, I need a few minutes. Just. Okay. Okay, so welcome. This is very special today because, we are celebrating 20 years of Symfony. It's more like 21 years for me, because I started in July 2024. And today I'm going to give kind of a weird talk with things from the past and maybe things for the future as well. Okay, 10 years ago, we were in Paris celebrating the 10 years of Symfony. And there, my very first slide was this one, the first change set, because we were using Subversion back then. This was the very first commit for Symfony. It was in October 2005. And since then, we've achieved a lot. So I'm not going to detail everything here, but maybe Twig 1 in 2011 with Symfony 2.0. Symfony 2.0 being more or less, the very first version of Symfony that is similar to what we have today. This is a very different framework from what we had in Symfony 1. Then we have a bunch of stuff here, a lot of different Symfony versions. Flex is something I'm very proud of, 2017, and more. And of course, SymfonyCast as well, since 2019. SymfonyCast is still very well alive, very active, even if okay. So, 10 years ago, I had also this slide. It was at the end of the keynote. And so we were releasing Symfony 3 back then. I announced that Symfony 4 would be released in 2017. This was when we introduced the new way of releasing Symfony versions. So you know everything about it. So 2 years, 2 versions a year, and an LTS every 2 years. Which means that we are going to release Symfony 8, maybe today. This was 6 years ago. So 6 years ago, we were all in Amsterdam together. Who was there? Okay, quite a few. Great. And I did something a bit crazy. I was like, what about releasing Symfony 5 on stage? It worked well. So what about releasing Symfony 8 live? So I prepared to make sure it's going to happen very smoothly. So to do that, this morning, an hour ago, I actually restarted the Git subtree splitter because I have a memory leak, whatever. I did that, and then I did, okay, I'm going to split again 8.0 so that it's going to be faster on stage. And I get the command from my history, and there was one flag named -scratch, which means remove everything and start over, which means creating the subtree splits for Symfony 8.0 from scratch. You know, like 15 years of commits, which takes more or less a day. I panicked. I felt stupid. And I was, you know, trying to figure it out with the code. Maybe I can do something about it. And I was like, wow, I have backups. So thank you, Upsun, because the subtree splitter is hosted on Upsun. So this is a slide I've just added an hour ago. And I think this is the very first time in my entire career, which is more than 30 years, that I've actually used a backup successfully. So this is all the things that we're going to do together. Let's do it, right? Okay. And I realized that I should have prepared something else, which is, haha. This is my computer. And I have somewhere a release procedure. So it's all manual. I mean, not all manual, really. It's super manual because I want to check everything as they happen. So the first step is going to, okay, maybe I can make it a bit bigger. So we are going to prepare the 8.0 release. It's going to do a bunch of stuff, really. But as you can see, so we are going to release 8.0.0. The next one is going to be 8.0.1, and the last one was release candidate 3. We're going to create a new branch. We're going to update the changelog. So that works because we are using Git log, and we have some kind of conventions for new features, for bugs, etc. Wow, we have a bunch of features. Oh, okay, so that's all the sponsors for Symfony 8. That's great. So thank you to the sponsors as well. So PHP Storm, Sulu, Redirection.io, Private Packages, and Sensio Labs, they are sponsoring this release. We are not going to update the contributors because I'm doing that only on version 6.4. Then I'm updating the version, and I'm going to create a pull request. Okay, we're going to come back to it later on. Okay, so one thing maybe you don't realize, I did not actually. Symfony is more or less a de facto PHP standard library. And I wanted to give you some numbers. And I'm always like, you know, so we have a stats downloads page on symfony.com where you have, the number of downloads live, and it's about 25 million a day, which is kind of crazy. And of course, we have a lot of CIs and stuff, and demos, and tests, etc. So I was like, this number is not that interesting. What is more interesting is comparing the number of downloads for Symfony versus everything else. So I've done the math, and we have 282 Symfony packages. So it's only about the Symfony mono repository plus the polyfills. That's all. That represents 0.06% of all the packages that we have on Packagist. And on Packagist, you have 3 billion downloads a month. If you do the math, it means that 25% of all the packages installs are actually Symfony packages. I did the math 10 times. I was like, it's just not possible. Maybe I'm wrong. Correct me. And the core of Symfony is really about the components. So it's not necessarily about the full stack framework that you can use as well, but the components are super important. And at the end of the Symfony 2 life cycle, we had 21 such components. And as you can see, with every new major version, we are adding more. Nowadays, about 5 to 6 new components every single major version, which is great. And if you have a look, those are super important, the new ones, emoji, right? I mean, to be fair, the other ones are super important and super useful. Okay, and it's not just about the components, it's also about bridges with the ecosystem. The obvious one is the number of PHP projects that are using Symfony. Big ones, small ones, and that's also why we get so many downloads, because there are a large number of PHP projects that are actually using some of the Symfony components or the full stack framework behind the scenes. We are bridging to the external world as well, not just open source. So this is all the bridges that we have for notifier, mailer, messenger, translation, and lock, which is a new one. And right now we have 111 such bridges, which means that when we are doing a release, we are talking about 180 different releases and tags that we need to do. That's something that we are going to do next. The big question is, what do we have for the AI world? You would have expected something about AI, right? Right. We'll see. I can see that you're super excited about AI. Okay, let's come back to the live release. So we've created a pull request. It has been merged automatically. We've done that on my fork, and now we are going to do the release dance. And the first step is tagging the mono repository. So the tag is only useful because we are using it afterwards to tag all the subtree split. But by itself, it's not that useful. Okay, so we're going to prepare the release as well here. So that's where it can, maybe it's not going to break. So same as before. So we are pulling the new stuff, the merge request. We are checking that we are actually at a commit that is a merge for the branch that is really a release and not something else. And now we are going to tag the release. So this is really a tag for the Symfony mono repository. So it means that don't get too excited. There is no thing released yet. And yes, there is this remove thing that I'm going to remove. That's a bug. I need to figure it out. So yeah, easy to fix. Anyway, let's come back here. So let's talk about AI. I'm using AI almost every day. How many of you are using LLMs on a daily basis, maybe? Several times a day. Okay. How many of you have never and don't want to use AI at all? Okay. I find LLM super useful, especially when I am outside of my comfort zone. JavaScript. Mostly. I'm using Code and Cursor nowadays. I'm trying a lot of things. But at the end of the day, I don't care too much about the code that is generated because I care about the code, the way it's written. And it means that I trash most of the code and I'm just using it as a good starting point most of the time, even for JavaScript actually. And more recently I was like, okay, I'm using it every single day to do stuff, but I'm writing prompts manually, I'm adding context there, I'm iterating a lot. But for some of the tasks that I'm doing, I'm like, maybe I can automate that a bit more. Maybe I can create an agent, maybe, to automate that. And it's possible, especially for things with no value or little value. I think I have some examples here. So for instance, everything that is non-deterministic, because if you have deterministic, then we have command lines. If you want to generate fix the coding standards, of course, you're not going to use an LLM. That would be a waste of time and money, really. For scaffolding, web controllers, CLI commands, we do have commands to do that. But even there, maybe we can use LLMs. But then, when it comes to updating the code, using an LLM is really super useful. And we are doing some of that. For instance, the make a bundle. when we are adding a new property for an entity, we are updating the code, but it's very simple. I'm going to give you some more examples afterwards where it's not so easy. And then when there is a lot of different possibilities and you need to compose the code that you want to generate, then an LLM is also super useful. So I want to package all the logic, but I have a bunch of requirements here. I want to be able to control the code that is generated. I want to make sure that I can trust the code that is generated, that is, it is written as I would have written it. I want to reach almost 100% accuracy, and maybe you're like, Fabien, it's not possible. Yeah, sure, but trying to be as accurate as possible, and I want it to be cheap as possible. Which means that I'm experimenting a lot with smaller models instead of the frontier models that we have nowadays. And also I want to avoid vendor lock-in. So I'm not using the latest shiny features from the big models, from Cursor, from Cloud Code, etc. I mean, I'm experimenting with them, but I don't want to use them too much. Okay, so the next step is actually syncing the tag, the monorepository tag, with all the subtree splits, so all the packages that we want to publish. Let's do it. So first, I'm going to check that everything is correct, so making sure that everything has been split correctly, which hopefully is going to be the case. Yep, that's the case. And then I'm going to tag. So what it is going to do here is we're going to iterate one package at a time. And then we are checking if the tag already exists. If it does not exist, then we are creating the tag. And we have one-to-one relationship between the commit that we have in the mono repository and the tag that we have in the subtree split as well. Which means that even if someone is trying to mess up with me, merging a pull request in between, it would not have been a problem, right? It's going to take a lot of time because, again, we have 180 different ones, and we are rate limited by GitHub. And because this is a new stable version, we are splitting everything. If we were tagging 8.0.1, for instance, we would only create the tags for packages where we have changes. So much faster for patch releases, really. Okay. Now, so I'm using AI, and I'm trying to think about ways to use AI to improve the Symfony developer experience. So I had these slides about Ryan where I was like, okay, he created the Symfony GX initiative a few years ago, and it was super, it changed the game, really. That's why we have flags, that's why we have PHP attributes. We did a lot of work there to make sure that the Symfony developer experience is as good as possible, and we are improving it with every single new version. So my first stop is upgrading the code. So for any minor version, we deprecate things, we are adding new features, and it's kind of tedious. I know there are tools out there that can help to some extent, but I think that's where an LLM can actually be super helpful. So removing the deprecation, changing to a new way of doing things, or using new features whenever it's possible. And the secret sauce here is making sure that we are building a context that is deterministic, because we have a lot of data about the application, so that it can be super accurate. So here, just a few examples of things that you can do. We can write relevant guides. So for instance, for each deprecation, we can have a small file, markdown file, explaining what to do, snippets of code, before and after, and that's enough, actually. And then instead of letting the LLM figure out which files they need to update, and Claude is super good at that. It uses grep and things, it takes time, it costs money, lots of tokens, so instead of doing that, we know which commands that you have. So we can just say, okay, this is the tool that you can use to get all the commands that you need to update. I'm talking about commands because this is an example that I have. So all the files that you need to update for this specific deprecation. So this is an example. So it is updating a command here. The deprecation is about the setHelp method that has been deprecated, and now you need to use the same as an attribute, actually, a property of an attribute. And it does a very good job at figuring out which ones you can update, because if in the help you have something that is dynamic, you are using a variable or something, then you cannot move that help to the attribute. So it does a really good job at understanding when it can do the change and when it cannot do the change. Super simple example, but it demonstrates that this is working correctly and it adds value. So this is the guide. Straight to the point, the minimum number of tokens, really. So for all the PHP classes using the as command PHP attribute, you must use the help property instead of calling the setHelp method. Before, after, and then I have an additional command at the bottom saying, if the configure method is empty, just remove it. And I think that's what we've done here on blah, 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 blah. Yeah, it removed the configure method because it was the only thing there. Okay, another example, make a bundle. Works well. Again, we can update the code as well with doctrine entities. But if we want to compose it for more complex things, if we want to support more than one ORM, if we want to support more than one templating engine, at some point the templates are going to be super difficult to understand. And again, instead of having a static template, I would love to have composability. So it's more about snippet of code. If you want to add a doctrine entity, this is how you add a getter, how do you add a setter, done. If you are using PHP 8 something, then you can use attribute. Before you cannot use attributes, and then the LLM can figure out how to actually take all this information and actually generate something that is optimal. Recipes update. Interesting, so we are updating the recipes from time to time, and we have this magic command that you can use to update the templates, the configuration files really. But if there is a conflict, this is up to you to actually figure it out. An LLM can be smart as well here, and it can help. And I think it opens the door to more composability again. So for instance, security configuration, the default configuration is several lines of code, and some packages want to add things there. Right now, this is just not possible. So that's something I would like to fix as well, letting, some packages actually adding stuff there or modifying stuff there. Another example is if you want to update the default template, because this is probably something that we are going to change. So it's super different from the default that we have on the recipes, and having an LLM helps also trying to figure out if we can add stuff there or remove stuff there. As a debugger, we have a lot of information, really. We have all the profiler information. We have, in the cache, we have XML, JSON files where you can get information about the container, about the routes, etc. So, being able to give all the command classes with their path is something that we can do very deterministically and super fast as well. Okay, so that's how we can use AI to improve the developer experience when using Symfony. Our next stop here is, if you are developing a Symfony application, is it a good choice for AI? If you want to use AI in your applications, is Symfony a good choice? How many of you have actually Symfony applications with some features using AI? Okay, not that many. How many of you are actually using something else? Python, Go, JavaScript, whatever for that. Okay. So actually we have a bunch of components that can help. The first one is obvious, but that's HTTP, client. Sometimes when I'm reading articles about AI, I'm like, wow, this is super complex because there are big words. But at the end of the day, most of the time, when we are interacting with LLMs, we are talking about HTTP calls, right? We're talking about an API that you're calling with HTTP. So it's super basic. At least for us, Symfony, super basic. And it's true for the frontier models. It's also true for the local ones. So, and we have a lot of experience there. We demonstrated that using HTTP client to actually connect to things like notifiers and mailer, it works super well. So what about doing it for LLMs as well? One of the things that is a bit different is that we need streaming there, which is not really the case for the use cases that we have right now. We have Twig. I need Twig in every single keynote. Twig is great, because nowadays we are using dynamic prompts because RAG, because whatever, you need to compose your context. So having a way to actually compose prompts with Twig is super useful. Workflows, and to be honest, many different use cases based on those components, process, whenever you want to run something on the command line, super useful as well, serializer, etc. And we have Symfony AI. Yeah, sure. It seems like I'm the only one working today. So Symfony AI is super interesting because maybe I have a couple of commits there, but it's not my work at all. It's community work, and it's Chris and Oscar. Where are you? Are you here? Oscar? Chris? Thank you. I can tell you that they are spending hours, days, months working on it. If you have a look at the repository, the number of pull requests, the number of commits, it's crazy, literally crazy, really. If you want to learn more about Symfony AI, there is a keynote tomorrow at 9:30 or something, and Chris is going to tell you everything you need to learn to know about Symfony AI. Don't get too excited about the website. This is just a landing page, really. But we need to start somewhere. Okay, maybe we have time. Yeah. So I've done prototypes, and here I'm really talking about prototypes. So I'm not going to release anything today. Sorry, but we have a hackathon on Saturday, and I would like for us to work all together on those possibilities and how we can use AI with Symfony a bit better. And make a bundle is one example. All those examples I've given. If you want to help, you are more than welcome. So, and again, I want to make sure that at some point we can use smaller models, maybe local models, instead of Claude and the likes. So the way I've been thinking about it is making sure that we are splitting the work. It's not like, okay, Claude, please upgrade my code. Done. You will be surprised. It kind of works. Of course, we're not going to do that. And if we split the work, then you improve accuracy a lot. And you have less hallucination as well. And when you have just, very specific tasks, you need to make sure that you can describe the task super precisely, and you're giving the context, and just the context needed to achieve the task. That's the example I've given before. And if you can do so, then you are reducing your costs, because we are talking about less tokens, we are talking about better performance, and the last line is super important. If, when you are reading the context, it doesn't make any sense to you, your context is bad. It means that there are things that are not useful, things that are out of the context, and everything that is optimized for a human is super optimized for the LLM as well. Which means that if we are writing guides for LLMs, they are also going to be super useful for humans as well. The other thing is, whenever possible, and this is possible here because we are talking about code, so we are updating or generating PHP, JSON, YAML files. So that's structured output that we are asking for the LLM to generate. So we can validate that the YAML is actually correct from a schema perspective, a semantic perspective, but also just the format. So we can run the test as well. If you have a lot of tests, that's even better. And something I've been working on recently is trying to have autocorrection in a loop. So if there are errors, I'm giving the error to the LLM, and it figures out how to fix it, kind of in a loop. And at the end, I'm also using an LLM as judge to make sure that I'm asking, okay, is the code good enough? Is it in line with the style that I'm using in the project, etc. This is super important for smaller models, not so much if you are using frontier models, to be honest. The last thing I wanted to share with you today is, can we optimize Symfony for this new AI world? What does it mean for Symfony to be used more and more for LLMs, by LLMs? Does it mean that we need to do something specific? Do we need to write the code a bit differently? Do we need to write more documentation, less documentation? What does it mean, really? And I've mentioned it already, but the great thing about Symfony is that by default, if you are using the full stack framework, by default, we have a lot of information that is kind of difficult for us to read and for us to digest, but super useful for LLMs. So, the fact that we can generate a JSON file with all the available CLI commands, super useful. All the information about the container. So if you want to get everything that has a specific tag, for instance, super easy to do, or things that are implementing an interface or whatever, super easy to do. Also, all the routes is something that we generate as well, so we can have a look at them, or the LLM can have a look at them. And of course, we can run commands as well. So depending, and a lot of commands nowadays have different formats, so you can have plain text, super useful when you are on the command line, but we can generally also output JSON formats, YAML format, whatever, Markdown as well. The profiler is interesting when you are debugging things, especially for a specific request, because we can, get all the logs, exception message if we have one, the exact configuration. This is gold for an LLM as well. So we have the information. Now we need to figure out how to actually package all this information so that we can feed the LLM with that as well. Better documentation, that's for sure. We can do way better than what we are doing today. Changelog is one of them. So if you have a look at the changelogs nowadays, we have a lot of information there, but we are not consistent. So sometimes when we are deprecating something, we have snippet of code before, after, not even most of the time, just sometimes. So I think we need to be better there and make sure that we are always documenting the deprecations that we are doing. And anyway, if you are a human, you need that information as well. Sometimes I'm reading the changelog and I'm like, I'm not even sure I understand what I need to do to remove the deprecation. Maybe we can split it in many files. This is the example I've just given before, where we have one Markdown file per deprecation, and maybe then we can aggregate that directly into the changelog, or we can create a link, whatever. We need to figure it out. And we need to be super good at pull request descriptions. Earlier this year, we had a conference in Chicago, and I gave an example, a pull request where I don't remember what was the topic of the pull request, but this description was super good with examples before, after, the rationale behind the change. And the experiment was super simple. I opened a Symfony project, and I was like, Claude, read this pull request and upgrade the code accordingly. And it did a wonderful job. It was, 8 months ago. It's probably even better now. So anything that is optimized for LLMs is great for humans as well, which means that it's not, even if it doesn't work well, it's not a waste of time. Okay, so I think it's going to be the last time. Yep, so we've released all the different packages. That's a lot of them, really. The last step is, so historically, I was checking packages because sometimes it got stuck. It's not the case anymore nowadays, so I'm not doing it anymore. I'm trusting packages to do the right things. I like to double check things. So here I'm checking that everything is actually correct, that all the tags have been propagated the right way. Okay, it's going to take some time, so maybe we can, Okay, we are going to ignore the errors. You are doing it yourself. No, just because, some tags do not exist for many different reasons, but as you can see, we're talking about 5.4. So we're not going to ignore if we have 800 in there. Hopefully, we won't have those here. Okay, let's come back here. I'm going to wait. So again, it takes a lot of time because we are doing, behind the scenes, we are doing many things, really. So it means, so right now, you can create a new Symfony 8 application. If you want to try, can someone try to actually say Symfony new whatever? You should get a brand new Symfony 8 application. And during the last few weeks, a lot of us actually worked on making sure that the bundles are actually also working well with Symfony 8. Sometimes this is just a matter of adding 8 as in the constraint, in the composer.json file. Sometimes it's a bit more difficult. Do you see 8.0? Nope, so we're good, so we're done. And the last step is super easy. Development version, pushing. And one last thing is, this one is about creating GitHub releases for, again, all the subtree splits, so it's going to take time. It's going to take care of also publishing the blog post. So if we go to SymfonyCon blog, yep, released. Okay, cool. And you can go to symfony.com/8, and we have a page about Symfony 8. Okay, I think we're done. Thank you. Enjoy the conference.